Alrighty, so it's time to do another News of the Week episode on this Thursday because I think from now on I will start doing News of the Week episode on Thursday whenever there's a busy midweek action, which we had yesterday. That there was 10 games that happened in MLS. But the first big news out of this week, well, actually, there is a lot of big news that came out this week. We even made an individual video talking about Wayne Rooney being the head coach of DC United. Well, now it seems like there's another well-known player that play in MLS that could potentially be the next head coach of an MLS team, and that player is Landon Donovan, who is rumored to be the next head coach of the San Jose Earthquakes. And I kind of mentioned this a little bit in the preview, but it's a mixed opinion in the Quakes fan base. I mean, there are some that have kind of forgive Donovan for what he did about 10 years ago. Well, actually not 10 years ago, but almost now 17 years ago of him defected from the Quakes and joined the Quakes' biggest rival with the LA Galaxy. And then there are some that still have not forgiven him and will always deem him as a Judas and one nothing part of the Quakes organization. Now, Donovan has been coaching the San Diego Loyals, and I think this season the Loyals actually have done a relatively good job. So I feel like maybe the Quakes would feel like this might be an opportunity to give a chance to Landon Donovan and see how he's going to do. I mean, for me, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how the Quakes are going to approach with their next head coach. And in some way, it's a big decision that they have to make because we've seen so many times this team has not got it right in terms of the head coaching position. I mean, the closest was Almeida, but even with Almeida, you saw the problem that this team has had, and that the fan base, I think, is started to not only run out of patience, but it's at a point where they're done with just have every single year being a bottom feeder and have to be kind of the doormat of MLS year after year. So let's just see whether or not if Donovan does come to this team, first of all, whether or not if he's going to be welcome from the fan base. I mean, I have a feeling it probably will not be welcome very well. I mean, for me, I don't mind seeing him. I mean, I know what he did 17 years ago what was bad, but there's always a sense that you need to eventually move on from that, and that if Donovan turns out to be a good head coach and deserve to be a head coach in MLS, then maybe that will be the case. But until then, it's going to be interesting to see if this rumor does continue, and especially, I feel like for the Quakes, I know they're very close in terms of the playoff position, and it's very tempting to get a head coach in so that they might do something similar to what we saw last year with RSL and also Vancouver did, which is getting they did get an interim head coach, but kind of got that coaching bump that guided them to the playoffs. But I feel like the long-term solution for this team is just trying to build up a foundation, or at least continue this head coaching search where they make sure they get the right guy in, and then once they do get the right guy in heading into next season, then you can start fixing some of the issue that this team have, which I think the obvious issue for this team is the defensive part. And as I'll talk about later in the review, after the Quakes got their first ever road win against the Galaxy last night, now there is a big decision that the front office has to make in terms of, well, they're not that far out of the playoffs, but do you decide it to maybe add some more pieces to basically trying to get this team to be a playoff contender. And maybe this year isn't a throwaway year, as many people, including myself, thought that this team was when Almeida basically left and Cavallo basically took over this team. But now moving on, in the next news is the Philadelphia Union has officially triggered Julian Carranza purchase option and will give Inter Miami 500,000 GAM. Now this is kind of interesting in a way that the Union decided to do right before when they were about to play against Inter Miami. And last night, Julian Carranza did play for the Union and face against his old team coming off the bench, and that I'm not sure if this was exactly kind of a timing that the Union has, where they knew that the match between them and Inter Miami is coming soon, and that in order for them to have Julian Carranza available because, you know, there is the league rule says that you cannot play a player if he is loaned to another MLS team. That's why they decided to get this deal outright. But nevertheless, you know, it is now done, and that the Union have give Inter Miami 500,000 general allocation money in exchange for Julian Carranza's full rights that the Union have, and in some way this is just an absolute bargain. And again, you know, this is a move for Inter Miami that, you know, I can see there are frustration in the Inter Miami fan base, especially with the way that Carranza, you know, for a while he really never fits with Inter Miami, and that when he comes to the Union, he immediately fits well. But I guess this is just another example of what happened when a player fits into another team system better. And again, I've said, when Carranza decided to move to the Union, I feel like this was going to be a good move because, you know, he gets to be with a team that has much more stability and much more coaching or much more better coaching compared to when he was with Inter Miami. And it's not a big surprise that he is thrived with the Union, and that, I mean, this was a no-brainer for the Union to exercise his purchase option and got it off for a cheap. Now, moving on, in terms of the next news, we have a couple more blockbuster moves that happened in this week in the MLS transfer window, because, you know, it feels like this week compared to the action that we had in match week number 19 in terms of weekend action was absolutely insane. And one of those big blockbuster moves happened a couple of days ago with Toronto FC acquiring Marc-Anthony Kaye from the Colorado Rapids in exchange for over $1 million general allocation money and Ralph Priso. Now, this was also a signing that I think I've talked about in the last News of the Week episode, where it was a possibility that Marc-Anthony Kaye was going to be going back to TFC. Remember, this was the guy that TFC decided to reject him, thinking that he was not good enough. And then when he got into LAFC, that's when he kind of made his name. In the same case when he moved on from LAFC to go to the Colorado Rapids. So it's kind of ironic, the fact that he's now back to the team that first rejected him, and that overall I think it should work well. And especially, you know, they hope it worked well, because, you know, they pay a lot of general allocation money for it, and they also move on from Ralph Priso, who, you know, I think he's kind of an underrated utility guy for TFC, and I think for the Rapids that should be a decent signing, not just with the amount of general allocation money that they got out of. Because remember, I think when the Rapids get Marc-Anthony Kaye, I think it was around similar amount. So in terms of profit or just break even point, they kind of break even in terms of that mark. But yeah, you know, for TFC, I think this is a good signing to stabilize their midfield. But also it's one that, you know, I really hope this is not it for TFC in terms of them trying to continue to get themselves back into what they should be belong, which is a playoff contender. Because like I said, one of the things that I'm still kind of surprised for this TFC team is they have not been able to find any defensive reinforcement. In fact, I'll talk about a little later that one of their defensive reinforcement that they bought this year, which earns up to be a deep, they decided to sign on a DP spot, unsurprisingly blow up in their face spectacularly. Now, moving on in the next news, we got FC Cincinnati acquiring Sergio Santos in exchange for up to $925,000 general allocation money to the Philadelphia Union. And I know I'm going to instantly make the jokes about how Cincinnati is literally buying the Philadelphia Union right now because of I think this is the fifth or sixth former Union player that have now come to Cincinnati. And again, it's not a big surprise because Cincinnati is literally taking every single member of the Union. I mean, they already took Chris Albright, their former sporting director, or at least one of the sporting director for the Union, and then of course they took one of their assistant in Pat Nolan, and now they have took so many of these Union players, and that they're trying to recreate the 2020 Philadelphia Union team, or maybe the 2019 Philadelphia Union team, which, you know, I don't think that's bad, because that team did very well in the league. And that team, didn't that team also won the Supporter Shield? Or no, it was the 2020 team that won the Supporter Shield. But either way, you know, for Cincinnati getting Sergio Santos, I think this is more of a depth depth signing, even though, you know, they did pay a lot to get him. Like 925K general allocation money is not cheap, and especially when you look at the Cincinnati attack, they're already pretty stacked in terms of that spot. I mean, with the likes of Lucho Acosta, Brenner, and Brendan Vasquez. It's kind of interesting that they decided to add more to it with Sergio Santos, but I guess maybe this is also another signing in mind where he might be able to come off the bench and make some impact, because, you know, we saw in the last game, or we saw the game yesterday that Cincinnati has against the Whitecaps, Santos really made some impact immediately, and it's just that if he was able to finish, then it would have been a dream start for his time with Cincinnati. But another thing that I might think that this could be a signing that Cincinnati have in mind is the fact that they might be moving on from Brenner. If they are moving on from Brenner, which there was a lot of rumor that he could be moving on this summer, but now it seems like he's got into a good form, and now they look like they're trying to retain him at least for the end of the season. But in the case that if they do move on from Brenner, maybe Sergio Santos will basically slot into that spot, because Santos is still relatively young. Like, he's still only 27 years old and still are heading into the prime of his career. Now, Minnesota United have acquired Paraguayan international fullback Alan Benitez. Now, this is also a signing that I've heard the Loons been rumored for the past couple of days, and indeed it is official, and that this is clearly a replacement for Romain Métanire, who, you know, I think Métanire time with the Loons is probably coming to an end, and it's sad that it has coming to an end, because he's one of the last great pieces of that very fun Minnesota United team from a couple of years ago, and, you know, the injuries that he's been dealing with him looked like he was coming back from an injury in the game against Paderborn, and then he basically re-injured himself, and now is back on the IR. And knowing the fact that the Loons are still trying to figure out how they can fill in for that spot that Romain Métanire occupied, you knew that they were going to look for a potential replacement for him, or actually now just maybe a permanent replacement, because, like I said, I think Métanire most likely is going to be moving on from the Loons this season, and most likely Alan Benitez will take that spot, and we'll see how he's going to do, because I don't know much about him, and that, you know, he does have some big shoes to fill in terms of Romain Métanire being such an impact, not only on the defensive department, but also on the attacking department too. I mean, Métanire, when he was at the top of his game a couple of years ago, he was considered one of the best fullbacks in the league. So yeah, no pressure, Alan Benitez, in terms of filling his shoes, but let's just hope that it's going to be just he's going to be just as good of a player, and that I don't expect him to be like have the full quality of Romain Métanire, because it's always hard to replace a decent player with another signing. But let's just hope that he's going to be at least have some of that quality, and hope to fix the one of the issue that I don't think a lot of Minnesota fans have been talked about. Like, I know a lot of people have talked about the attack has been a problem, but people forget that fullback position is also a problem for this team. Now, Atlanta United have signed Colombian winger Edwin Mascara via the U22 initiative. Now, this is kind of an interesting signing in a way where, again, Atlanta continue to throw the money in terms of getting some attacking talent, and again continue their approach of going down to South America and find these hidden gems and hope that they can sell them off of a profit. Although, you know, knowing how things have gone in the last couple of years, and that philosophy that they've been doing ever since day one came into the league, it has not worked out very successfully. In fact, it's been heavily criticized, especially from their leader Joseph Martinez. Talk about how he's so frustrated with the front office, continue to just kind of replace guys, and then decided to not sign or he's frustrated with the fact that, you know, they keep signing these new players to replace guys that they didn't even need to replace in the first place, and basically tearing up a core where was already winning championship for them. But, you know, in this case, we'll see whether if he is going to work out. And again, there's already a lot of depth in that attack for Atlanta, so it kind of doesn't make sense, the fact that why they decide to sign another attacker and another winger, and knowing the fact that I think the biggest issue Atlanta is having right now is the defensive area. And although they have found some reinforcement in terms of that, they need more. Consider the fact that, that I mentioned, that entire back line is completely injured to hell, and that they're relying on a lot of guys that don't have a lot of MLS experience, and it's basically showing with their inexperience, and that Atlanta has not been a great defensive team ever since a lot of these main starters like Miles Robinson in that back line has been out for the season. Now, St. Louis City signed Danish winger Isaac Jensen from a club that I have no idea how you pronounce it. My best way to pronounce it is Santos, but that is probably completely wrong. And anytime with names that is involved, like Danish name or even just Scandinavian names in general, I don't know how to pronounce. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of these Scandinavian club has just letters that are kind of like just the initial of their name, because if they go with their full name, then I don't think anybody would actually know how to pronounce it. But this is an interesting one in a way where I don't know a lot about this kid. He's only 19 years old, and he's with the Danish international or the Danish youth international team. So we'll see whether or not if he is going to play with St. Louis as they continue to build up their squad, and that as now St. Louis getting closer and closer to their expansion season, we're starting to get an idea maybe how their roster is going to be. But it's also going to be interesting to see what kind of style that they're going to be heading into their expansion season, because one thing I know from these expansion side that came into the league for the past couple of years, each of them have different style of how to play for. There's no one expansion team that just basically decide to copy the formula of another expansion team to do. They basically have their own style. And well, I will say that some do try to copy what other team have done, but some of them has been very successful, and some of them have not been very successful when trying to copy that style. And again, it would be interesting to see what kind of approach St. Louis is going to do. Are they going to go with the Atlanta LAFC approach? That doesn't seem like it's the case, where they decide to spend some big money to improve the squad, or they're going to try the Nashville and in some extents the Austin FC approach, which is just kind of get themselves some decent player and work from there and see how it goes, which is kind of what Charlotte is doing right now, and hope that as the year goes along they'll continue to build a decent squad, either to be maybe a playoff contender, or heading into the second year they could be a playoff contender. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and now talk about players that is leaving MLS. So the first player that is leaving MLS I'm going to talk about in this news of the week is Carlos Saucedo, which TFC have officially terminated his contract, and that he is going to be going back to Liga MX, which the good news for TFC is that they do open a DP spot. The bad news for TFC is that like I said, this turns out to be a huge bust, and that all of this, remember how when they decided to get Carlos Saucedo in exchange for Jefferson Soteldo, and how I'm pretty sure TFC fans would love to have that deal how they negotiate that deal, because there's a reason why I've said that when you decide to sign a designated player and he's a defender or he is a center back, it's not only just a no sin that you just committed, but you better hope that he actually turns out to work well. And it's not a big surprise that Carlos Saucedo has not worked out for TFC, and that the only good thing I think for TFC is that at least they acknowledge that and decide to terminate his contract. But even with them terminate his contract and have another DP spot open, it did comes with a cost, with them just wasting so much money for signing a guy that didn't make a lot of impact for the team in terms of the defensive part, and also not to mention they lost one of their more dynamic attacker, where again they still have Jefferson Soteldo. I'm not saying that this TFC team would still be where they are right now, because again the big problem for this team is the defensive part. The attack is not the issue with this team. The defense is a huge problem, and that again, let's just hope that maybe they'll think about getting a couple of defenders. And again, I can understand maybe in some way they decide to sign a DP defender because they're so desperate in terms of, but you're also so are taking a huge risk in terms of that, and that there's a reason why not a lot of teams have signed DP defenders, because there are some good defenders within the league, or even somewhere else where they could around the world where they can get them for a cheap, but apparently TFC that doesn't feel like that's their priority, because again, it's kind of surprising the fact that the obvious issue of this team that is the reason why they're in the mess that they have right now is that they just don't have any good defensive reinforcement or any good defenders to keep them having to make these defensive mistakes time and time again. And as we go through the summer transfer window, let's see if they're going to do that. But for Sporting KC, they've also mutually terminate while their player contract, and while that player is Nikola Vujanovic, and for Vujanovic, it's kind of unfortunate that it never worked out for Sporting KC. Again, I thought originally when they signed him, this was kind of like a short-term solution to trying to have him maybe score some goals. I mean, this was kind of a signing to hope to numb the pain in terms of losing Alan Pulido for the rest of the season, but at the same time, this was a guy that, it's pretty clear that he basically coming to a league where when you ever see foreign player coming to a league in a foreign country, it takes time for them to adapt, and for Vujanovic, you never really adapt into MLS or with Sporting KC, and then the injuries, of course, has happened, and after that, Sporting KC just didn't want to do anything of that, and decided to terminate his contract, and at least that opens up an international spot and open up a roster spot. I mean, there's a lot of team right now that they are thinking about getting rid of some of their players on the roster spot so they can maybe sign a couple of more players. And one of those team that I'm going to talk about is RSL, who they decided to open up a couple of roster spot, first loaning Jonathan Menendez to Vélez Sarsfield, and then decided to transfer one of their midfielder, Everton Luis, to SK Beuven in the Belgium second division. Again, this is clearly a roster dump kind of move with Jonathan Menendez. I don't think Johnny Menendez has ever got a fair chance for RSL, and it's kind of a shame that of course is the case, because he definitely had some good potential to be a decent player, but never really gotten a lot of chances. And then Everton Luis, he is definitely winding down his career and kind of in the twilight of his career, and that RSL feel like this is kind of the time to let, like, anytime when you have someone that is like already in their mid-30s and they're not starting for you, I think it's the best that you decided to kind of move on from them, and that of course is the case. But for RSL, they're kind of fortunate that they at least get some money out of that deal, because most of the time when we see teams decide to move on from veteran player, they basically just decide to cut them at the end of the season roster move, and they don't really receive much out of that deal. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, and probably one of the bigger news story of this week is Luis Suarez. So there is heavy rumors suggest that he is going to be coming to MLS, and there's like 5 to 6 MLS team that is rumored to get him. And apparently I've also heard those reports saying that these MLS teams that is looking for Luis Suarez are teams that is outside of the playoffs, which, I mean, I'm not that surprised, because a lot of the team are desperate in terms of getting a number 9, and some of these teams have struggled to score goals, and what a better way to do that, by getting a guy that is considered one of the best striker in the world for the past decade or so. Now, that being said, it will be also very interesting to see how much that these MLS team is willing to get Luis Suarez, because I think the numbers and the amount of money that they're going to get him. Well, actually, I think he's also now just a free agent, so I don't think they actually will pay anything of that, and they can get this transfer for free. But not only the fact that they're going to have to make him a designated player, but also the salary is going to be very, very high. Like, it's probably going to be right up that range, similar to the amount that Lorenzo Insigne might be receiving, like around $15 million a year. But either way, I don't blame for some of these MLS teams to get Luis Suarez, because Suarez is another name that's been linked to come to MLS for a while. And knowing how crazy it's been this season, where we already saw Gareth Bale and Giorgio Chiellini going to LAFC, I won't be surprised we're going to get another big European star name coming to MLS, and this kind of feels like it's back to 2015 all over again, where I remember 2015 was a year when there was tons and tons of European European star player coming to MLS and kind of getting their last paycheck there, and that's when a lot of Eurosnub people have deemed MLS as a retirement league, and I know these kind of moves doesn't really help that to shake off the reputation that MLS is a retirement league. But like I said, I feel like these are also just kind of moved to maybe get the butts in seats, but rather than actually making a competitive, them getting competitive and maybe making the playoffs. Because as I said in a video that I made just a couple of days ago and last week, looking at all these big European star players come to MLS and how much impact that they have made to the team. Well, they have made some big impact, but in terms of playoffs, that is not the case. None of these guys that we talked about that are well-known player have really got them team even close to make it to MLS Cup, which is the ultimate prize where team wants to get. Now, another well-known player that is not as big of a profile as Luis Suarez, but is someone that I actually forgot to mention in the last news of the week, is Jesse Lingard. So there's a lot of talks that a lot of MLS team is reported to try to get Jesse Lingard out of Manchester United. And now it seems like that team that is looking to trying to get Jesse Lingard is DC United. Now, it's not a big surprise because DC just named Wayne Rooney as the new head coach, and I think during the time when Jesse Lingard was with Manchester United, which he's been there for a very long time, I don't know if he was teammate with Wayne Rooney and whether if they actually have a decent relationship, but I think this was kind of a move where, hey, it's a former teammate of me. I'm just gonna try to get him to play for me at DC. And if Jesse Lingard does come to MLS, I still feel like Lingard, I know there's a lot of things that, especially in the British media, he always gets a lot of hatred in the English media, and that some are justified, but some I think is kind of harsh, because when you see how he performed outside of Manchester United, doing that loan spell he was with West Ham, he was a decent player. Like he really lived up to his potential to be one of the most promising youngster from a couple years ago. So I feel like this could be the case where I feel like in some way him being at Man U kind of ruined his career, and that they kind of ruined his development, and that him moving on from it and potentially coming to MLS. I mean, we've seen before where some players that maybe don't have a good reputation in Europe or struggle to play in Europe, once they come to MLS, they start to look like a superstar. I mean, that one of those players that I know for sure is the case is Carlos Hill, of how he really struggled in Europe for all this time, but now coming to MLS, he's now considered to be not only one of the best player in MLS, but literally the best player in MLS, winning the MVP last season. So maybe it could be the same case for Jesse Lingard, and that he is going to be coming to a DC team. There's definitely some good attacking pieces in this DC team too. So yeah, I won't be surprised if this move does eventually happen. Now, moving on, in terms of now moving away from talk about some of the transfer rumors and signings and players moving on with their MLS team, because there was a lot of them, to now just kind of talk about general news in MLS. So one of the general news came from Atlanta, where Atlanta United goalkeeper Bobby Shuttleworth have announced that he's going to retire after 14 seasons in MLS, and certainly congratulations of a very good career that Bobby Shuttleworth has had. I will never forget of him during his time with Minnesota United, and how he was definitely a guy that really kind of is a stepping stone of how the Loons have always tends to have some decent goalkeeper. I mean, Shuttleworth, even though I know during the time when the Loons were conceding goals game in and game out, I don't think it was on Bobby Shuttleworth. I mean, he was trying his best to trying to basically make as much save as possible, because his back line was just completely hung him out to drive game in and game out. But at least he's a good stepping stone in terms of some of the good Minnesota United goalkeeper we would get, guys like Vito Manone, Tyler Miller, and now Dane Sinclair Hound. So yeah, certainly have great memory of Bobby Shuttleworth, and I also maybe might be thinking about making a video about the career of Bobby Shuttleworth, and especially it's kind of a shame that he never got a chance of winning an MLS Cup. I mean, the closest was with New England back in 2014 when he came very close of winning at such a young age, and the refs just fell short against the Galaxy in that 2014 MLS Cup. But other than that, congratulations of a great career that Bobby Shuttleworth has, and I might even think about doing a career video about him too. Now, speaking of Atlanta United, so Atlanta United sporting director Darren Eales is actually offering free away tickets to all the season ticket holders that is in that Atlanta United fan base, and I guess maybe this is just used as a PR way to trying to maybe calm the trying to please the fan base that, I talk about how it's been a very toxic last couple of days for this Atlanta United organization, especially with one of their fan favorite and one of the most well-known figure, that is Joseph Martinez, creating a rant toward not only the players that is with this team, but also the front office too. So I think the front office know that the fan base is clearly turning against them. So in a good move to maybe give them some goodwill, decided to announce that they will offer free away tickets for any away game that Atlanta United is going to have. Now, this isn't the first time I've seen teams have done that. In fact, I know the Quakes did it a couple of years ago, and I'm not quite sure if they still do it for a season ticket holder, but they do offer free away tickets to some of the well, not some, but all of the away games that the Quakes of course do, and it's good that of course is the case, because I think that's one of the thing that I feel like every team should do nowadays to improve in terms of away fans being at the stadium. I mean, I've been to so many MLS games, and that there's been times where I have definitely seen that away travel culture, where I've seen some away fans of course going to games, and me myself is kind of one of them. I just recently went to an away Minnesota United game, and it was kind of a little disappointed that there wasn't a lot of Loons fans there, but there was some, including one that I met when I was at the stadium, and also not to mention the fact that it kind of doesn't help the fact that it was a midweek game, and midweek away travel is definitely brutal. But at least in this case, I feel like if there's a way to improve the away kind of days experience here in the U.S., maybe this of course would do it. But I guess maybe I will never imagine the same way as we see some of these European league, where in these European league, especially in the Premier League, I mean the away or the away days culture is definitely strong because of how closely each of the club is and here in MLS it's probably not possible because of how big this country is, and how much of a hassle to have to go to an away game, where it's not just simply driving down to go to the stadium, but you have to actually fly to another city to of course watch your team play. But now moving on into the last news of this news of the week is that Audi Field officials have said that they are looking to complete the roof on the east and west side of the stadium, and I believe that's the side of the stadium that where the supporter group is, where it's still open, and then of course the other side. But either way, I think that's a great idea. I feel like they should have just make the whole stadium that is covered by a roof. I mean, I know the main stands and also the other one is already partially covered, but they should have done it for all sides of the stadium. I mean, when you have a roof that is complete in all sides of the stadium, not only it's better for fan experience with you don't have to like sit into the hot sun on a summer day, but also it improved atmosphere with some of these stadium that is kind of partially covered. You can see the noise that it brings down in the stand. So yeah, it's good to see that DC is doing that, and especially again, that's one of the things that fans probably been asked about, because of how it must not feel fun to just kind of sit on a hot summer day in DC and you don't have actually a roof that covers you if you're sitting in or standing in the supporter section or on the other side of one of the end line of the stands. But either way, hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of all these news I've talked about. And as always, if there's any news I didn't mention here on the News of the Week episode, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do like, smash the subscribe button. And yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.